Welcome to Smokin Bulls, the podcast about business, money, and lifestyle. Today we're going to be speaking to Lori Power about being an author and writing books. My name's Tyler.
My name's Dave.
Let's get into it. So if somebody's a writer like yourself, do you go somewhere for support or resources, or if somebody's starting writing, like how do they get involved in it? Like, is there a how-to book, a writing for dummies, or like what?
There's so many books. There's so many groups. There's a lot of shysters. There's a lot of people that will take your money and you'll get nothing out of it. If you have to spend money, then, a lot of people will self-publish. Especially on fiction, I'm not a big fan of self-publishing. I think that if it's worth getting out there, it's worth it for a publisher to take it. Everything else is noise. And so it gets a little bit harder to get your stuff noticed with all of the self-publishing noise out there. My go-to is to belong to, there's the Writers Guild of Alberta. That would be your first and foremost. Canadian Writers Guild would be your second. Nothing but fantastic resources. I belong to to what we call a beta group. So a beta group is, and I've belonged to them for years. They're from all over North America. So there's two in the United States, and there happens to be another one here in Canada, but in the eastern side of the country. And every week we just submit something to one another and we give opinions on, have I pulled the reader out? Is my story flowing? And that kind of feedback is instrumental in making sure that you're staying on point, because there's a lot of things that are happening inside your head when you're writing, and it may not transcribe onto the paper. So I may be describing you and I'm saying, well, you're sitting there and, this is what you're wearing. Tyler's wearing a gray suit jacket and, Dave has a beard. So they'll come back and they'll go, well, is he naked? Like, did you forget to tell us that he's wearing a blue jacket? So that's the purpose of a beta group. I highly, highly recommend them.
Interesting.
I feel like all that money I blew at the mall when I got those modeling photos taken, I never got a call or anything, but I think I got shystered on that one. Guy said he could put me in some films. I was like, wow.
So, Lori, I think you've told us before, you've written and published 10 fiction books and 2 that are industry specific. So you're in group benefits and you've got 2 industry driven books. Is there a place to find these? Is there a way to promote them, or do you have a website, or how do we get in touch?
Find me on Amazon, both .com and .ca. So the list of the books are there. There's also, a couple little children's books that I put in when the kids were little, and you get inspired by that. So I don't include those in my fiction novels, but they can find them there. Lori Power Writer is my website that I use for promoting the writing, but having a lot of fun with my latest industry book on They'll Never Know. It's all about insurance crime, and I'll tell you some of the stuff I'm coming across. I probably have 30 books in the works just from true crime stories in insurance. It's just outrageous.
Really? So insurance fraud, basically.
Yeah, insurance fraud, different insurance crime, different ways that people try to take advantage of insurance and feeling compelled to do so, right? Like insurance is one of those things that people feel that's okay to do.
They owe me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the murders are outrageous. Has anybody ever told you about Michael Malloy? Okay, this guy, I got to tell you. I know you don't have time, but I'll tell you anyway.
We got time.
Okay, so Michael Malloy was an Irishman in the 1930s, okay? And he was, I guess, a bit of a bum. I won't go into a lot of details, but he started hanging out at this speakeasy. And these guys became known as the Murder Squad, right? So anyway, I forget what specifically they were called, but they decided they were going to take out insurance policies on Michael Malloy because the speakeasy needed the money. So they figured he's a drunk. he's not going to last very long anyway. Let's take out a couple insurance policies and we'll make sure he dies. So they started giving him wood alcohol instead of whiskey or whatever else you might serve. That's okay. Michael Malloy, like a good Irishman that he was, drank that down and asked for more. They made him sandwiches made with where they sprinkled in tin and glass. I know you're thinking this isn't true. It's absolutely true and well documented.
Like, is this a joke? Where are we going with this?
And he lived through that.
Like this is the first steroid.
They tried to freeze him. They covered him. They got him drunk till he passed out. They doused him with water and put him out in the winter trying to get him to have hypothermia. Eventually, they did kill him, but and then since they were caught. But those are the heights of crazy insurance stories that are out there.
Those are the fun ones. The boring ones are the put life insurance on your spouse 3 days before something happens to them. Like
that's done so often.
I know. There's not a lot of foresight going on there. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you one more. One more is a couple down in Texas. They were young. I got to blame it on their age. They decided they had 2 little kids. They decided they needed to cash in on the money. So they exhumed a body out of the graveyard, and they thought they were doing good because it was an older person. So they put that person in the car, drove the car over the cliff, set the vehicle on fire, claimed it was her husband who had died. Problem number 1, the body was female.
Wow, I guess when you exhume a body, you really don't know unless that's your specialty.
Well, you could have read the headstone, though.
Yeah, well, that might have helped too. Yeah. What happens if it's got like 2 names on it?
Something.
Stay away from the 2-name headstones.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like my wife definitely listens to the true crime podcast all the time, and I got to say there's some pretty bizarre stuff she listens to, except she falls asleep to it. So I get stuck listening to it, and then so the next night she'll start it halfway through because she didn't catch the last half. Of course, I'm in bed going, and then he does this, So I listen to these things 2 or 3 times sometimes, and I'm like, oh no, here we go.
Watch yourself there, Dave. You don't know what ideas are coming in.
She could be scheming. That's I'm worried. I'm worried now.
I'm worried that if somebody ever takes my computer and looks at my search history, I'm like, I'm going down.
That's right. Just don't touch your husband or do anything to him. Hopefully he passes in natural causes and it's not got your fingerprints anywhere around it.
True enough.
And now that this is recorded,
at my door, I'll go, okay, here I go.
That's right. Yeah, I T-boned a car 35 years ago. That's all I've ever done. I even reported it. Nice.
Well, we've taken enough of your time, I think, today, Lori, and we want to thank you, of course, for your support and coming on the Smokin Bulls podcast and joining us today.
Name.
So thanks for joining us, Lori.
You guys
thanks,
have
Lori.
a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Smokin Bulls, the podcast about business, money, and lifestyle. You can find out more about us at smokinbulls.com or follow us on our social media.